Hey guys, welcome to your Mr. Rodwell's recap for 6.1. And this is the start of chapter 6. And in chapter 6, we're talking all about percentages. And I kind of want to break down that word itself a little bit before we even start. Percent, it literally means per and cent. And cent is kind of your root word there, which stands for 100. So when you talk about how many cents in a dollar, well, there's 100 cents in a dollar. Or when you think about how many years in a century, well, there's 100 years in a century. So this actual root word here, cent, means 100. So when we talk about percent, it literally means how many out of 100 or how many per 100. It's basically just comparing your amount to the number 100. And we know that we can compare different quantities through ratios. We've been comparing different quantities through rates. You can compare them through fractions. And so here in our first example, they've given us kind of this uh, base 10 block, all right? And we've got 45 of them are going to be colored in. And then we've got like a remaining amount that isn't colored in. So if I was to write as a fraction how many are colored in, well, there would be 45 out of 100 are colored. As a ratio, it would be 45 colored to 100 total. And as a percent, well, it would be 45 over 100, which literally means 45%, because we know that this dividing line literally means per, and we covered that kind of in our rates, okay? So this is 45 out of the 100, or 45 per every 100, which is 45%. Okay. And we're going to continue to, I guess, become familiar with percent. And we're also going to figure out how to represent percent as fractions and percent to decimals throughout 6.1. Okay. So it's pretty simple stuff. But a lot of this sort of stuff might be new to some of you. So let's have a look at these first couple examples. So up here. 72 out of 100 cats are long-haired. So what percentage of the cats are long-haired? Well, 72 out of 100 as a fraction looks like this, 72 out of 100. And that literally means 72%, which is 72%. So 72% of the cats are long-haired. Now, if I was to go to our next example, it's going to be slightly different, and this is where we start to find equivalent fractions to find out our percentage. So B, a fruit display of 50 apples has 43 green ones. So what percent of the apples are green? Well, it's 43 out of 50, which would be this 43 out of 50. And then what you would want to do is you would want to figure out, whoops, sorry, my bad. If you have 43 out of 50, well, you want to figure out how many percent. So you would want to figure out how to get from 50 to 100. Well, you times by 2 and you times by 2 and you get on top 86. And this is literally 86%. So 86%. And that's what they've shown you here. We're multiplying the top and bottom by 2 to get a denominator of 100. And so our numerator becomes 86, and that's 86%. 86% of the apples are green. Similar thing with this one here, but you might have to multiply your numerator and denominator to find an equivalent fraction. You also know how to divide your numerator and denominator to find an equivalent fraction, to find how many over 100, to figure out how much percent. So out of the 2,000 people at a concert, 240 are teachers, rest are students. What percent of the people at the concert are students? Well, let's actually change this, and I'm going to change this to teachers. Okay, let's figure out teachers first, because they gave us the teachers amount. They gave us 240. So 240 out of 2,000, which is this. And so if I'm going to do my working out over here, I want to figure out how many out of 100. Now, you can do this by firstly, if you want to divide by 2 to get to 1,000 and then divide by 10, you can. Or you might know that 2,000 divided by 20 is 100. And so if I did the same here, then I would get 12. And so that's what they've done here. Well, they've actually done it in multiple steps. They've done 240 divided by 10 to get to 1,000. Oh, sorry, to get to 200. And then they've divided them both by 2. So you can do it in multiple steps if you want, or you can do it in just one step, depending on your comfortability and familiarity with finding equivalent fractions, okay? So we get 12 over 100, which is 12%. Now, this as a decimal, if I was to ask you about what it is as a decimal, well, this is 12 over 100, which is 12 hundredths. And that as a decimal is literally just 12 in the hundredths place value. Or you can think of it as 12%. Think about this as cents, and I like to write my decimals with money in mind. If I have 12 cents, then I have as money 0.12. If I had 640%, and you can get percentages that are above 100, then I've got 640 cents. And so that in money would look like $6.40. Okay, so that's just two different ways to figure out. Oh, I wouldn't need the dollar sign. Well, this is one way, one method to figure out the decimal, and this is another method to figure out how you would represent your percentage as a decimal, your percentage or your fraction as a decimal. So let's continue through. Let's just try this. Actually, I'm going to skip that one. Let's go straight to this one here. Out of the 400 animals in a zoo, 32 were monkeys. What percent of the animals were monkeys? Well, there was 32 out of 400, and I want to figure out how many per 100, how many percent. So I'm going to divide by 4. I'm going to divide by 4, and I get 8. So my answer is 8%. 8%. Now, if I was to write this out as a decimal, well, 8 cents as a decimal looks like this. Or I know it's 8 over 100, which is 8 hundredths, which would be 0.08. Again, two different ways to find your decimal. 8% is 0.08 is 8 over 100, okay? And I would probably simplify this down as well. So what percent of the animals were not monkeys? Well, if I know that 8% weren't monkeys, then I know that 92%, oh, sorry, if I know 8% were monkeys, then I know that 92% were not monkeys, okay? Because you should have 400 animals altogether. If I had 400 over 400, well, that would be 100 over 100, which would be 100%. So I know that if 8% were monkeys, then the rest, being 92%, would be the not monkeys, would be the other animals, okay? Now, as we continue on, we're going to, I guess this is our last little section here, and I'm going to do it all at once for you. Express 24% as a fraction in its simplest form. So 24% is 24 over 100. Then we want to simplify, okay? You can divide them both by 4, and then you get divide by 4 is 25, divide by 4 is 6, 25ths is their most simplified version. You don't have to divide by 4. You could have divided by 2, then divided by 2 again, and then figured out that you can't simplify anymore. You can do it in one step or multiple steps, depending on how comfortable you're feeling, okay? B, express 78% as a decimal. Well, 78% is just 78 over 100. 78 hundredths is 0.78. Or if I had 78%, this is basically the same as writing 78 cents, which would be 0.78. Two different ways to figure out your decimal there, okay? So I'm going to quickly run you through 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then I'll get to some of that homework help as well, okay, guys? So let's have a look. Express it as a fraction or a mixed number. Now, you get a mixed number if your percentage is over 100, okay? So 48% is 48 over 100. Well, I'm going to divide them both by 4, and I'll get something over 25. Divide by 4. Well, I'm going to get 12 over 25, or 12/25ths, and that would be your most simplified version. 55% is 55 over 100. I want to divide them both by 5, so I'll get something over 20. I will get 11 over 20. That's the most simplest form. 108% is 108 over 100 as a mixed number. It's 1 and 8 hundredths. And again, I've got to simplify. I can divide both of these by 4. 1 and 2 25ths would be your most simplified version. Express each percent as a decimal. Well, 13% is 13 over 100, which is 13 hundredths, which is 0.13. 8% is 8 over 100, which is 8 hundredths, which is 0.08. And 126% is 126 over 100, which is 1 and 26 hundredths, which is 1 and 26 hundredths. So that would be our solution there, there, and there. Pretty simple stuff, especially with the decimals, okay? So let's have a look at some of that homework help. And I'll start with the first one. Out of a total of 500 flowers, 65 are roses. What percent of the flowers are roses? So 65 out of 500 are roses. How much percent or how many out of 100? I need to divide by 5. I need to divide by 5 and I would get 13. So my answer is 13%. Just like that. Okay, now this second one might be a little bit trickier. I just wanted to see how you guys went, but out of 200 packages sold, 15 of them are sesame seed bagels. What percent of the bagel packages sold are sesame seed bagels? Well, there's 15 out of 200. So I want to figure out how much percent divide by 2 and divide by 2. Now, this is going to be where things might get a little bit complicated for you, especially if you're just in the regular classes. Well, 15 divided by 2. What is half of 15? Well, I know it, but I'm going to do my division. Can 2 go into 1? No. Can it go into 15? Well, it can go into 14. 7 times with 1 left over. Add a decimal and a 0. It can go into 10 perfectly 5 times. So it's 7.5. So this is what I've got, 7.5 over 100, which is 7.5%. And you can have decimal percents, okay? And we're going to get to that further in the chapter. We're going to be doing a lot of multiplying and dividing by products of 10. By multiples of 10 to kind of shift that decimal in and out, okay? So next one, 3 for your honors. In a survey of music preferences, 81 out of 450 students said they preferred country. So it's 81 out of 450. You need to figure out how many percent, how many out of 100, okay? I'm not going to help you out for the honors problem because I'm pretty sure that if you have that and you're an honors student, you know how to solve that. So express each percent as a fraction or a mixed number. Well, I'm only going to do 2. I'm only going to do these 2. And you should be able to do those 2 based on these solutions. So 78% is 78 over 100. And I need to simplify it down. Okay, well, I'm going to divide by 2. And I get 39 out of 50. And that's the most simplest form because 39 and 50 don't share any common factors. 276% is 276 over 100, which is 2 and 76 hundredths. And then I need to simplify that down. So I'm going to divide by 2. 2 and 38 fiftieths. And I can divide by 2 again. And I get 2 and 19 25ths. And that is going to be your most simplified version, okay? So you should be able to do these 2 based on the work-throughs that I've done for your other 2, okay? I'm going to erase some of this. And then now we are expressing percentages as decimals, okay? So again, I'm just going to do these 2. 43% as a decimal is 43, well, as a fraction is 43 over 100. 43 hundredths is 0.43. 579% is 579 over 100 is 5 and 79 hundredths, which is 5 and 79 hundredths. And that would be your second solution there, okay? So again, pretty simple stuff, turning your percentages to decimals, all right? And we just have a couple more questions. I think it's actually only 2. These ones here, 18A and B. So math journal basically just means you might have to do a little bit of writing, okay? In a game of darts, Annie hits the bullseye 4 times out of 25. So Annie is 4 out of 25. Benjamin hits a bullseye 8 out of 100 times. So Benjamin hits it 8 out of 100 times. Who hits the bullseye more times? Okay, well, pretty simple to answer. Well, who hits the bullseye more times? Ben hits it 8 times. Annie hits it 4 times. Well, your answer, Ben hits the bullseye more times. But whose aim is more accurate? I want you to justify your answer. Well, Ben, if we were to do it as a percent and we want to compare, so we want to compare 2 fractions that have the same denominator or percentages to each other. So Ben has an accuracy of 8%. He hits it 8% of the time. Annie, if we were to turn it into percentages, well, we're timesing by 4 and we're timesing by 4, it's 16. So Annie would hit it 16% of the time. Even though she's hit it less, she had less shots. So Annie is far more accurate because Annie hits it 16% versus Ben's 8% accuracy. Okay? Accuracy. So Annie is going to be twice as more accurate as what Ben is. All right. And so, guys, that's your 6.1. Pretty simple stuff to start off with our percentages. It is going to get a little more complex, but really happy with how you guys did today. And yeah, really hoping that that helped you complete this tonight's homework. See yous.